The Independent Republic of Mike Graham on Talk Radio.
Tonia Buxton is here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
How the devil are you?
I'm good.
I'm feeling feisty today.
I'm uplifted by your words.
Good.
I feel like I'm ready to do a positive battle.
Let's. You know what? Lawrence Fox was here yesterday, right? He came in to do planks, which he'll be back doing very shortly. And I said, and we went for a drink afterwards. I said, it feels like we're in the resistance.
Yeah,
it feels like you're fighting this kind of battle every day against the doom and the gloom and the people who say that, well, you don't know anything. What do you know? I mean, you're always getting, aren't you?
Oh, my
Why
goodness.
are you talking about stuff?
Why am I
You're
talking
just
about
a
stuff?
chef.
I'm just a cook. What do I know? Nothing to do with the fact that I've got to the grand old age of 53. I have 4 children. I've had 4 different types of jobs, which included being a school teacher in Tottenham. All the information I read more than anything. One of the main things is, you know, if I was going to go in for a knee operation, Mike, I would get a consultant to tell me, a couple of consultants.
Yeah.
And from what the 2 consultants is, I would make my decisions about my life, my children, my body.
Right.
We can't do that anymore.
No.
You have to have a degree in science, and it's got to be the right science as
Except,
well.
yeah, but the weird thing is it's people who don't have any of that, but who say, well, you have to listen to the experts. And you go, well, which experts are they?
Exactly.
Like Neil Ferguson, who actually studied physics and is now teaching us about viruses, which he knows nothing about, teaching us about medicine, which he knows nothing about, making rules about how we should behave, which he also knows nothing about.
I completely agree with you. And the thing is, when this report came out, the Health Committee report came out, you know, you're reading it and you're trying really, really hard not to let your blood pressure go up because it's a complete whitewash. They've completely ignored what has caused the huge amount of damage that's happened, not just in Britain, but across the world, apart from a few places, you know, like Sweden, Florida and Texas. They've completely ignored the kind of the worldwide evidence that shows that lockdowns do not work.
Right.
It was lockdowns that did the damage. And they've not said that. And the whole British media, apart from this station and a couple of television one particular television station, have not asked any of the questions apart from why didn't you lock down earlier?
Yeah.
I mean, that question...
That's their only conclusion, isn't it?
That question makes me want to just go insane. I mean, don't you understand? That's what did the damage.
Yeah.
The people that are dying now of underdiagnosed and untreated cancers and a whole plethora of illnesses are dying because of lockdown.
Yeah.
I know parents, as you know, some of the people that when I go on the protest with, are mothers who have lost their children through suicide during lockdown. Lockdown caused that, not
And they
COVID.
talk about mental health as an issue for teenagers as if the two things are not connected. Oh, yeah, we've got an epidemic of problematic mental health with teenagers. Well, why do you think that might be?
Oh my goodness, the tsunami of mental health that we have across the board, adults, but in particular our young, and not just teenagers, because the teenagers are ones that you're seeing now.
Yeah.
This has mentally affected young children, and we won't see the effects of that for years.
Right.
And lockdown did that. Lockdown did that because lockdown made people stay at home. It made abused women have to stay inside with their abusers.
Yeah.
Abused children have to stay in and have no safe space, had to stay home with people that were abusing or neglecting or treating them cruelly. Lockdown did it. Why has no one asked that question?
I know.
Why has there not been a cost-benefit analysis about lockdown?
Yes. And there really has to be, and we'll just have to keep asking for it and keep pushing for it, because when the real inquiry happens, because this is not the real one,
absolutely.
that's when they are going to have to actually address all
They
that.
have to answer these questions. They can't just keep whitewashing everything. They really can't. And you know that I am in a situation where I have 2 sides of the family. I have my mum, who is now just tumbling into dementia, and lockdown did that.
Is she still having treatment for cancer?
My mother-in-law is in hospital. Yeah, my mother-in-law on the other side is yes, she's still having treatment, and all of this, all the suffering that she's having at the moment is purely due to the fact that her doctor was one of the really, really negligent GPs. Yeah. There's some amazing GPs, and I know amazing GPs, so this is not all at them, but there are some really vile, negligent, awful GPs. Yes. And she is in this predicament because her GP would not see her for 6 months.
I had
just
a call
having
yesterday.
phone consultations.
I had a call yesterday from a man who was talking, he didn't want to reveal exactly who it was that was his relative, but it was his relative's child, who was born basically with a hole in the heart, and they didn't know for a year because the child was never examined.
Unbelievable.
Right? And now the child has to have undergo open heart surgery. He's got 3 holes in his heart, which he's had for a year. and he's lucky he's still alive.
Very lucky to be alive, and it's just horrific
not good
that
enough,
this is
is
the
it?
case, that you can't get seen. And even now, you go into hospitals, and you're only allowed to go and visit someone. It doesn't matter how sick they are or what's going on. You're only allowed to go in and visit them twice a week. So they are sitting alone, and they are getting successively worse because the whole thing about, especially when you've got an illness like something like cancer or something, you need visitors to rise your spirits, to give you hope, and you can only have someone visit you for 2 hours twice a week, and it's got to be the same person as well,
A nominated individual.
and where is this coming from?
Right.
Oh, is COVID not flu?
Right.
Why are they continuing
Yes.
this? And this is where, when I've had people within the NHS, so people working on the ground within the NHS, I've come across some absolutely amazing people. But whoever's coming up with this I sent a very imploring letter to the matron of this particular ward, and I just got a standard note: it's COVID. This is what we've got to do. We've got to save lives.
Yeah.
But you're killing someone I know by this process.
And also this still nonsensical kind of, I know this is far less important, but yet still for the country's sake important, civil servants who are all working from home.
Oh, outrageous.
I was at a do last night in Canary Wharf talking to some old colleagues from the newspaper business, right? And I'm not going to mention the paper, but they have said, the management of the company have said, we're never having you back in the office, ever. And I'm going, sorry?
What?
What, you're going to run a newspaper, which is already in pretty serious decline, without having anybody here? And they've just accepted it, and they're going, oh, it's quite good, really. And I'm like, what? Why wouldn't, newspapers, newsrooms, I don't know if you've ever been in one.
No, but they
some of the greatest places in that you will ever spend time in, I mean, in the 80s, they were pretty raucous and pretty, crazy. And it was great fun. And everybody had a great time. And it's probably slightly less good. But how can you run an organisation that's about publications and about media and about communications
without being there,
being in the same room with
Absolutely.
each other?
It's an insanity.
It's mad.
But so these big companies are doing it because obviously they're saving money on rents and things like that. But it is to the detriment of everything else. It's to the detriment of the people that are not going in as well.
Yeah.
I know some people think, oh, it's great, I don't have to get on the tube and I don't have to go to work and whatever. But in the long run, they will suffer too.
No, I walked through the sort of the bottom level of Canary Wharf yesterday. There's a Waitrose at one end, and then there's a sort of I can't remember what's at the other end, a restaurant, and an awful lot of it is just gone.
It's shut.
The shop fronts that were open, which are now just covered over.
But it was a prime site for restaurants, I know. Because we were looking with the Real Greek to go to Canary Wharf, and it was really difficult to try and get a site there. And they were prime rents, prime places to be for restaurants.
Because there was something like, when I was working there back in 2005, there was about 80,000 people working there every day.
Absolutely.
Right? A lot of money changing hands, all people who were making pretty good,
livings,
pounds.
Yep.
And, lots of people spending money, lots of people hanging around in the evenings. It was really vibrant. Last night, it was like a dead zone. Yeah.
And that's what lockdowns have done. Yeah. Lockdowns have done that. COVID didn't do that. COVID is a virus which is now endemic and it's kind of burning itself out. Right. But lockdowns did that.
And do you know what I do now? Whenever I meet more and more people, they all say, oh, yeah, I had it. They've all had it. Yeah. Everybody's had it.
I'm like, everyone's had it.
But you're not dead, are you?
No.
And hardly any, and I was talking to my sister who lives in America, and they have exactly the same rate of death as we do, 0.2% of the population. 0.2.
As Sunita Gupta said, and the people from the Great Barrington Declaration said, this is a kind of, it's a tsunami. It's going to get who it's going to get. You can't lock and hide away from, it's not the bogeyman that's going to go away. You can't lock doors and hide away from it.
Right.
To a certain extent, the vaccine has helped with those that are vulnerable and those that are elderly. Yeah. But as they always said, there should have been herd immunity for the young. Most of the young have had it. So this is why I don't understand this persistent blackmaily way of trying to get the young to get vaccinations.
Well, the latest,
when they
which
just
I'm sure
don't need it.
has riled you as much as it's riled me, Sajid Javid, who's also found himself on the planks list this week, urging parents to get their kids vaccinated because nobody's getting it done. Only 11% of children are now under 15 have been vaccinated because nobody wants it.
No, so he's going, don't need it.
Right.
They do not need it.
But he's hinting that, well, if you don't do it, then, they might not be able to continue with face-to-face schooling. Absolute rubbish.
It's just this constant, utter, disgusting fear-mongering that we're getting. Like you said with the ports and everything, it's keeping people in this constant state of fear where their anxiety is up, their adrenaline is up, and therefore you're just more malleable. You're more controllable when you're in a state of fear because you're and I know this, and I'm not a doctor, but I know that your hypothalamus then would always go for safety rather than happiness.
Right.
And because you keep people in a constant state of fear, they'll always go for safety.
Right.
So whatever someone's dangling in front of you as this is the safe thing to do, that's how they control you and that's how they make you do it. Well, I'm standing here right now and telling you, you're not controlling me anymore. I'm fed up with it. And mothers and parents across the board, we've had enough.
Yeah.
Our children need to go back to school. It's got nothing to do with being vaccinated. Again, this report, doesn't even talk about the fact that those, like my children who are at state school, were completely let down by the education system. Now, my brother's kids and other people I know who had private education, well, they were at it. They were Zooming every day, 6 hours a day, doing the right thing. My children were lucky to get on hold.
No, the first part of last year, from sort of say March to the summer, my kids didn't get given anything to
Nothing.
do. The teachers were sort of like, well, if you want to do some homework, you can. Oh, really? Well, you think a 14-year-old's going to go, oh, yeah, I volunteered to do some homework. No.
When I asked our school why they weren't Zooming in like the private schools, they said it was health and safety. And I remember sending an email back saying, you have lost your minds or you think I'm an idiot if that is the reason that you're giving, that you're not regularly Zooming in. How can it happen in private education? Their education continued and they progressed, and yet state school education, it did not continue, and it has had a massive drop down.
Of course it has.
And lockdowns are to blame to that, and our government is to blame for that.
Yeah.
And we're not having it anymore. I'm not having this dangle, right? You've got to do as I say. You've got to vaccinate your child, whether they need it or not, whether it may or may not do them harm. You've got to do it if you want them to be educated. Well, no. I'm just not having it anymore.
I'm with you, absolutely right. And also, you think about our lives, and, you and I have lived reasonably well and long, but somebody who's only 15 hasn't lived that long, and so a year and a half out of their life is huge, massive,
Absolutely massive, especially at these pivotal times, when you're kind of just getting into being a teenager, 15, 16, 17. These are times that you mix with a lot of people. You kind of find out what your character is. You probably have your first kiss during then or something like that. And none of that happened. None of that happened for our children.
No, I mean, I said to my 17-year-old last summer, I said, go and hang around on the street corner and drink some cider. Yeah. Go have some fun.
Exactly.
Just get out. But he was kind of reticent because he hadn't been anywhere for a long time.
And, parents like us, we thankfully are not succumbing. We haven't been pushed by the fear.
No.
There are many parents though who are so frightened because, as we said, the propaganda that was done, 330 million spent by the government to make people frightened, has had a huge effect on these parents. So these parents are more fearful. They're giving that fear to their children, and it's just continuing. Whereas I'm like, go on, just get out, get on with it.
Because that's the kind of parent that you want to have as a child.
Absolutely.
But as you say, there are so many who don't have that confidence even, or they don't have the ability to push back. Or
they've had a good job done on them.
Sure. Yeah, they're not sure if they can. And, some people also will tell them that they're terrible. I mean, I remember when they went back to primary school, I think, it must have been, I guess, September of last year. And all the I just happened to drive past this primary school one day on chucking out time, and all the parents were standing in the playground waiting to pick up their kids with masks on.
Insanity.
And you're going, you're outside.
Yeah.
And it turns out the school had asked them to do it.
Again, what rights do the school have to do this? This is the other thing that we were talking about. There's a lot of schools and council health officials who are taking it upon themselves to decree what goes on in schools at the moment. Some are talking about reintroducing masks or reintroducing bubbles or sending people home when they're not sick. But this is local council area. They've become inflated by the power that they've been given, and it needs to be culled.
Yes, it really does, because this report also does not really properly represent the rest of the country. It represents people in the Westminster bubble who have all had money all the way through, who have all been paid, who probably didn't do very much because they were zoomed in whenever they felt like it. And it hasn't in any way encapsulated the feelings of the nation.
Not at all.
Because we know for a fact, I think it's, 70% of people actually continue to work.
Yes.
Not at home, but actually doing their proper job.
And mainly serve.
Yeah.
Serve those people, those elitists that stayed home and Zoomed and did things like that. So those, funny how, COVID doesn't affect a delivery driver or a takeaway driver
a supermarket worker.
Or a supermarket
worker.
I
don't think there's hardly any cases of people who were working in supermarkets getting COVID.
Absolutely.
Hardly any.
None at all.
And
so
then I don't know if you heard Vaughan Gethin, the Welsh health guy, was on with Julia the other morning, and she was saying, please show me the evidence why you're introducing vaccine passports. He couldn't do it because there is no evidence.
There is absolutely
and do you know what he said?
Evidence.
He said, well, we know that nightclubs are places where COVID spreads. And I'm going, well, hang on, they've all been shut.
Yes,
for a
how do
start.
they know? How do they know
so
that?
how do you know that? And if somebody's vaccinated, you can't stop them spreading it anyway. So what's the point?
No, vaccine passports are the most horrific thing to come into play at the moment. And anybody who's playing that game is going to regret it greatly.
Yes.
Not just for themselves, but for their children and for the way this country is continuing. Vaccine passports are an anathema and they must never, ever be introduced. And we must stand up as people. You know, this kind of lethargy that people have, well, it's all right. Oh, might as well. I've been vaxxed, so I might as well. It's got nothing to do with whether you've been vaxxed or you're not been vaxxed. They must not come into play. They are dangerous, they are dictatorial, and they will damage our society as we know and love to live it.
Yes.
This must not happen.
It must not happen, and it's for us and others. And I think actually the children's vaccinations was the tipping point. I mean, Laura Dossel was here yesterday, and we kind of thought and said at the same time, people just said no. That's the line. The line is now crossed, and we're not going over it.
Yeah, and actually not only are we not going over that children's line, we're actually bringing it all the way back now, all the way back. You know, we let you push and nudge us too far. And now we're pulling it back. We've had enough.
Yeah.
We want to go back to pre-COVID times. That is the life that I cherished being a British person, living in Great Britain. That's the life I cherish. And I will not give an inch of it anymore. I am fed up of it. I'm fed of being bullied and pushed about and lied to.
Yeah.
The lies and the hypocrisy have sickened me to my stomach. And I'm ready to take battle now. In a positive way.
Yeah.
I'm not actually feeling, during lockdown and what was going on, I was very low. And
You
thinking,
were.
gosh, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I felt, you know, I was having these kind of night tremors where I'd be walking around the house going, what's going on? What's going on? I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
It was really affecting me. But actually, I'm galvanised now. This is what I will tolerate. I will not tolerate being bullied and pushed around. I will not tolerate you doing things to my children that I don't approve of. I will not tolerate vaccine passports. And I'm going to stand tall. I'm hoping that the nation, this fantastic nation that we live in, is going to join me and just say, we voted you in.
Yes.
We tell you what to
Exactly.
do. Enough is enough.
Exactly right. And you mentioned your mother earlier. She's in Cyprus, I presume, still.
Yes.
How are things there? Because you were a bit
Cyprus,
disappointed when you went there, weren't you?
I'm really, really disappointed in what's going on in Cyprus. Cyprus is a show your papers place. You can't go anywhere. They've bullied the people so much because what they do is they fine them. So, you know, if I want to go into my friend's restaurant and not show my papers, as it were, he will get a substantial fine or she will get a substantial fine. So it's emotional blackmail as well. They're so frightened. They've lost so much money. They haven't had the tourism that they need to make them survive.
Right.
And on top of that, they're getting these draconian fines from these COVID marshals that are everywhere.
Right.
I mean, this whole thing about people spying on people is some Stasi kind of nation way of living.
Yeah.
It's not how we live here, and it's not how the Greeks live. It's not how it's done. But this
they're very
insidious
tactile
creep,
people, the Greeks.
so tactile,
right?
Absolutely. You know, it's the way we do things. But you know, I will have to go over again and see if my parents are okay. They're not in a good way, and I have to go and see and check that they're all right.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make a stand and say, right, I'm not going. I don't agree with this. But what can you do?
Well, you have to go. I mean, I'm going to go see my mother at Christmas. By the looks of it, now we're going to try and have a sort of big family reunion, which would be fantastic.
Lovely.
You know, and I'm hoping that by the time that comes, there won't be any of this rubbish about testing this, testing that.
There won't be if we stand up to it.
They keep doing away with different. You know, suddenly now you don't have to quarantine if you're coming from a red-list country. Well, why? Why did you have to do it before?
Power.
Why are we not doing it anymore?
Control.
Huh?
That's
I mean,
all it is.
It's
That's
mad,
all
isn't
it is. That's all it is. And,
every single rule that is in that report and every single criticism of those rules is wrong. Because the rules should never have been there.
Should never. And also still, look at what's going on now. You know, there are certain places that are mass mandating you again. Yeah. You know, and a little bit bully. Yeah. A little bit bully with the way that they ask you.
It is.
Because I will now no longer say I'm exempt.
No.
I will not wear a mask.
Right.
I have read the science.
That's it.
I have had COVID.
Yeah.
I will not wear a mask.
Even
Full
the
stop.
scientists are saying there's no point.
Absolutely no point at all. So what's
what's that all about?
What is that about?
I don't
What's
know.
happening?
I
It's
wish
about
I knew.
power and control. That's all it is.
I wish I knew. We finished again.
No way.
I know.
Had so much to talk about.
Well, you want to mention anything quickly before we stop?
I just wanted to mention a little bit about this blackfishing thing.
Okay.
With Jessie Nelson, that
Right.
all the people that were coming out and hashtag be kind to her when she talked about the fact that she was almost suicidal and she has such issues with her body confidence and the way she looks, and all these people that came up and said, you know, her mental health is really important, are the same people that are now saying that she's blackfishing, which is a new word. I think
I haven't heard that. What is
it's a new made-up word, which means that if you try to,
because I've heard of catfishing.
No, this is blackfishing.
Right.
And what it means is, so if you've got a tan and you plait your hair, then you're culturally appropriating somebody else's culture. And in this video that she did with Nicki Minaj, she's got plaited hair and she's quite tanned in it, and they're saying that she's, trying to pretend to be a black person, and so it's a racist thing that she's doing. Now, I've had enough of this.
Yes, it's mad,
it's got to stop. How you dress and what you do with your hair and whether you like a tan or don't like a tan has got nothing to do with racism.
No.
And this whole kind of looking to be offended all the time is really, again, another thing that's very, very bad for our kids' mental health. Stop
Absolutely.
it. They've got to stop it.
They have got to stop it. We shouldn't be letting these people run our lives at all. It's time to just say no, as Nancy Reagan used to say.
Yeah.
Tonia Buxton, great to see you. I'll see you a bit later on
See
this
you
afternoon,
later.
but we'll say nothing about that because that's a secret. We keep secrets here at Talk Radio. We've got lots of them, and we'll see you in a minute.